Hello everyone and welcome to this latest video discussion as part of the RICS Tech Partner Programme. My name is Andrew Knight and I've been working now with RICS for over 12 years. I sit within our thought leadership and analytics part of the organisation, and I look at the impact of data and technology right across the built and natural environment. And with over 110,000 members working worldwide, right across the property life cycle through land, planning and development, construction, brokerage, valuation, finance, building surveying, building operation, asset management. It's an incredibly wide canvas upon which data and tech is having a profound effect. And indeed, our members work across all the major asset types: land itself, commercial, residential, alternative assets and infrastructure. So once again, a very wide range of context in which data and technology is really having the really profound and beneficial effect. And I'm really glad today to have Asyar join us from Asite. So welcome to the discussion, Asyar.
Right, thank you very much, Andrew. So yes, my name is Abou. I'm the Professional Services Manager at Asite. I've been with Asite for 7 years now, looking after information management processes within the construction industry, advising customers on the best practices and ensuring their compliance with the ISO standards and previously the BS and the PAS 1192 standards. As part of my role right now, I look after the customers in general and the services that we offer to customers in the Middle East. I've worked with many organizations from different sizes, including large and medium-sized developers, into also contractors and consultancies within the Middle East, but also around the globe. I worked also closely with several customers in the UK, and I'm also a member of Building Smart UK and Ireland chapter, helping the industry and the professionals within the built environment sector get the most out of the open BIM standards and facilitate the conversation between professionals on the ground and the standard and the professional bodies. So in general, I'm quite well versed in the industry when it comes to information management standards, but I'm also quite excited about sustainability, which is our topic for today. Sustainability in the built environment has always been an interest of mine. I've actually done my thesis and master's on sustainability in the built environment, and it was quite an interesting topic for me since then. So yeah, I'm very much happy to be here today, Andrew, and looking forward to tell you more about what we have been working on, something very exciting that I believe the industry will benefit from.
Indeed, well, it sounds like you have a very busy life, so thanks for taking the time today to fit me in. I guess, as you said, sustainability is really the big theme that's going to run through our discussion today. And from your perspective, can you share that pivotal role that sustainability practices play in shaping the future now of the built environment, especially when you consider the significant carbon emissions that unfortunately are associated with construction in the built environment?
Absolutely, yes. As you rightly said, the built environment is actually responsible for around 40% of global carbon emissions around the globe. Basically means that sustainability is also responsible and has a significant role in addressing the climate goals. This has also been stressed by several government bodies, but also international bodies, including the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which emphasized that there's an urgent need for construction or the built environment in general to reduce carbon emissions by a minimum of 50% before 2030. So we have 7 years, actually less than 7 years left to achieve these targets, and unfortunately we're not doing great so far. But those targets are actually only to reduce or to limit the global warming effect to 1.5 degrees Celsius. So it's not actually a huge target either. And that makes it no longer just like a moral imperative. It's actually more of a necessity now for our survival. So there's a huge responsibility on the built environment to reduce its carbon emissions and to also adhere to those kind of global requirements. But then what the good side of this is that the sustainability practices in the built environment in general have seen a lot of kind of economical benefits and increased in, for example, long-term savings for the built asset, but also in kind of increasing the property values. So what we've seen is sustainable buildings and sustainable built assets in general actually have increased in value over the past few years, and that is driven by the economic benefits and the savings that sustainability can introduce to the built asset, but also driven by the people's demand for sustainable buildings, and you kind of see the huge benefit overall from sustainable practice in that.
Indeed. So, it sounds like an obvious question to some extent, but, what motivated Asite to develop a sustainability module, and how does that align with the whole kind of evolving landscape of sustainability in that construction part of the process?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, again, it's all driven from that kind of responsibility that the built asset has. And we see ourselves at Asite as part of that. So we are a software provider, but we are very involved in the construction industry, that we offer our services to the biggest built asset stakeholders. So from that perspective, we see that our module was developed in terms of requirements as a response to this responsibility, and again in hope that we can be part of that mission of reducing carbon emissions around the globe. But we have also seen an increased demand from our customers, from the suppliers and stakeholders in general in the built environment, in terms of kind of finding the right innovative solutions to allow them to reduce their carbon emissions, to allow them to monitor their energy and water consumptions, but also to help them with the social elements of sustainability, ensuring ethical and kind of fair practices being kind of conducted on site. All of that created that demand for that solution. And we see the solution as a catalyst for this transformation in the construction industry. Just like our other offering at Asite, as you probably know, Asite offers many other solutions when it comes to information management, including processes for managing documentations and information regarding the contract, the custom, the program elements. So sustainability is only one of those factors, and it has to be managed and monitored in a way that offers the most value, ensuring also that the data capturing is done in the most optimal ways, in the most efficient ways, structured ways as well, because that data will then be used in kind of reports and dashboards that will help the stakeholders make the right and informed decisions at the right times. So in general, that's how we see the product fits within this area. But we also see, again, as I said earlier, when it comes to global standards and kind of global and local regulations, there's definitely a huge demand there. But then I'd like to also reiterate that this module offers more than just a tick box or a compliance checkbox that companies require. They actually are seeing huge benefits, both on a strategic level, enhancing their brand reputation and ensuring they have a better competitive edge in the market, and obviously the cost benefits that I mentioned earlier regarding the reduction in the long-term cost when it comes to the classes.
Indeed. Now, you touched on the fact that obviously there's a lot of focus on carbon, but we're talking about a much broader sustainability debate here in terms of its, the multifaceted part of it, and arguably the kind of ESG definition, where we're not only looking at that environmental side, and indeed within that it's not just carbon, it's waste, but also there's the social, the governance piece, and indeed also thinking about it across the full life cycle, because clearly when we build, a lot of so much of those decisions that are taken at the build stage affect that operational stage. So, how does your module address that broader ESG dimension and also that full life cycle of assets?
Yes, that's a very good question. I think looking at the life cycle element first, it's essential that we don't ignore any of the built asset life cycle stages, because buildings are done to kind of last for a very long period of time, and we cannot just focus on what happens at the early stages when it comes to design and construction. We need to look at beyond that when it comes to the operational stage, which is the longest and the most expensive stage overall. But yeah, so the module of Asite looks at all of these stages kind of equally. We evaluate and monitor the sustainability metrics, and obviously when it comes to all the facets of our aspects of our sustainability, when it comes to environmental, social, and the governance parts, and to kind of start looking at certain kind of examples to show you what we currently look at. So when it comes to the environmental aspects, starting at the early stages of the design, we offer a solution through our 3D Eco module, which allows architects and designers in general to visualize their sustainability metrics and the carbon emissions directly on a 3D model, which is a huge added value when it comes to making the right design decisions at the early stages. And as we know, design stages are kind of cheaper and easier to implement as long as they're done as early as possible. So the earlier you make those design changes, the easier and the more cost efficient they are. And visualizing this data on a 3D model helps us also understand where the inefficiencies are, where the design changes are required, and we can then run a simulation analysis where we see different design decisions having a different impact on sustainability metrics, alongside the collaboration element that comes along with that, which basically helps us introduce these design changes or collaborate on these design changes across multiple stakeholders. But then looking at the construction stage, which is a huge factor here as well, we need to look at all the carbon emissions and the waste management and the water management, void energy consumption throughout the design stage, ensuring that the metrics or the data required for this is captured in, as said earlier, in a structured way, in a seamless and standard way that allows us to then present and visualize that data in a dynamic dashboard, which will then help us make the right decisions. But then looking at the social elements, which is again a key factor when it comes to making the right sustainability decisions, we need to ensure that social well-being and also in general workers' welfare is being monitored throughout the design and the construction stage and the delivery stage in general. Monitoring also the compliance of certain suppliers in certain projects, ensuring that the data is monitored on a longer period of time, where we kind of revisit certain practices and ensure that these are constantly being enhanced and improved, and then making the right decisions at the procurement stage. Because if we find that certain suppliers, for example, are no longer compliant with social metrics or the workers' welfare requirements or compliance requirements, we can then make a decision at an early stage in the procurement for next projects to prevent those suppliers from participating or to kind of avoid them being part of any future projects. And that is a crucial factor when it comes to enhancing the way we kind of make the decisions on social or workers' welfare in general. Right now, what we see is there's a huge disconnect from what happens on site and what happens at the procurement stage. We're trying to link that cycle and make the right decisions at an early stage. And lastly, when it comes to the governance, which again is an important factor here, in addition to the compliance with the global kind of standards and the local regulations and laws in each region, we have, for example, our module is in full compliance with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or UN SDG. Plus, in local in regions like the Middle East, we have implemented standards like the Istidama standards, which are again quite common and required across multiple kind of levels. So we've seen that creates a kind of a reassurance for suppliers, but also for developers to ensure that their supply chain is in compliance with the industry and the requirements there. But on top of all of that, obviously, when it comes to governance, we've seen that there's a huge demand in certain regions of the world, specifically in the Middle East, on monitoring the supply chain investment into the economy and the local economy, and that what they currently refer to as the in-country value score. Which is again an area that Asite can facilitate, where you can kind of keep track of all of your supply chains in-country value scores and evaluate them and make the right decisions at the procurement stage, ensure that your supply chain is contributing to the kind of the economic growth within the country that you operate in.
Indeed, indeed. Now, I guess one thing that always I think is a big challenge now, increasingly with the amount of data and technology that we have available, is being able to use this data to drive decision making. And I guess I'd be interested to hear how you're making sure that actually people aren't sort of swamped with data, but they actually get information out, because they can then make these informed decisions at every stage of the asset life, but certainly get some real value from what can be perhaps an overwhelming amount of data sometimes.
You touched on the right point, actually, because here, when it comes to data, we always have the fear of too much data and not being able to monitor or process that data in the right way. So when this is our focus with Asite sustainability module, we know that there's so much that we can capture. We know there's a lot of data that will benefit us in making the right decisions. But what we try to do is focus on capturing the right data at the right time and presenting it to the right stakeholders that can make the right decisions. So looking at, for example, the delivery stage, we ensure that on site we're capturing the data that is most relevant to us at that stage. So we no longer, for example, focus on what's happening, in the design elements. We're focusing our decisions on the key activities that take place on site and how we can reduce the impact of those activities, whether that was an environmental or a social factor. So what happens is that this data is then captured and then presented and visualized in a dynamic dashboard. When I say dynamic, it means that it's interactive, meaning that you can see what certain decisions can have in terms of impact on your practice or your environmental factors in general. But more importantly, this data is captured real time. That helps us, again, understand what is currently happening on site and how we can prevent that from going above our KPIs, or perhaps also making sure that there's certain regulations and changes take place in terms of social well-being to ensure, again, the prosperity of everyone involved in the construction stage. So I would say that element of visualization and also the collaborative with that solution within Asite, which allows certain or multiple stakeholders to come into that centralized place where all of the data is presented, and then they can all collaborate on the decision-making process. It makes things a lot better from an efficiency perspective. Communication becomes a lot more structured, and it allows us to make decisions a lot quicker.
Yeah, you mentioned collaboration there, and one thing I think there's always, as you know, a challenge in not only the construction cycle but more broadly is integrating, getting these different teams and professions to work together around architects, engineers, contractors, other stakeholders. And I guess now with sustainability, it becomes an even more important element of getting all these different disciplines to work together. So how do you see, once again, what you're doing helping that particular challenge?
100%. So if we start from the early design stages, which is, again, in my opinion, is the most important stage when it comes to making the right decisions for sustainability. So we see at the design stage, there will be multiple kind of stakeholders involved, including the architects and other designers, and obviously the client and government bodies, or perhaps planning departments. All of that requires or increases the demand for a collaborative space for those decisions to be made in a most efficient way. So looking at how Asite's 3D RIPO module operates is that it allows us to visualize the carbon emissions, and both embodied and carbon emissions factors on a 3D model in a way that makes it a lot easier for us to understand and to consume, right? So allowing every one of those stakeholders to come together into a single place where they can see their data and look at the design decisions having an impact on the model directly. For example, choosing certain type of material will immediately be reflected on your model and the sustainability metrics that comes from that, which will help you then make decisions accordingly. So if that material creates a huge carbon emission, then we can change that type and act accordingly, or otherwise, again, the decision on the design elements. So maybe if we change the design of the building, that could also improve the way the carbon emissions are being generated. So that, again, will make that collaboration a lot easier. But then looking at design, the construction stage, similarly as well, When it comes to making certain decisions on the type of like the transportation use, or how much energy we're consuming, and how much water being consumed as well, and the way we are recycling our material, all of that requires certain multiple departments to come together and to agree on the right solution for that, and that again is facilitated through a collaborative platform like Asite. Decision making in real time is also essential when it comes to collaboration cannot happen if we decision making cannot happen if we are not collaborating, and that again is where I see the added value here. And as I said, it goes beyond just having a module that captures that data. We have a lot of other factors here that come in place where we're reducing the cost of the building overall, which means again the cost department can come into this and make the right decisions as well. So in a way, yeah, I would say collaboration is key to achieve the success when it comes to sustainability.
Indeed. And you've talked there about visualization. I mean, can you kind of almost bring to life, I think, how this visualization works for people in terms of having more impact than just raw data, and where you've obviously got sort of three-dimensional models and just sort of visual ways of providing this information to these different kind of stakeholders?
Yeah, so I think it goes without saying, right? That if we look at a dashboard or like a visual element, you're always going to be able to interact with it a lot quicker, and your processing time will be much faster. So actually, studies have shown that visualization increases and speeds up the decision-making process by almost 60,000 times. And in many areas, we've also seen that people can retain the information that they see in a visual perspective much longer than what they do in a text document. So this is where we see it's also a key factor for those who are working on site. They're not always looking at dashboards, right? They just need to remember the things that they've seen when they were in the office, and then to try and make the decisions on site on the spot sometimes to ensure that they are making the right decisions. And that's where we see the powerful kind of ability in Asite's visualization and reporting elements. I would like to elaborate on this, but perhaps by showing some examples of those visual elements and the dashboards that Asite can offer in this area. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen. All right, fantastic. So what you see on my screen is Asite's landing page, or Asite's dashboard, as we call it, which is basically the first thing that the users will see as soon as they log into the system. And obviously, the visualization is a key element here, as you can see. So we focus on ensuring that the users will see the relevant information for them as soon as they log in. And particularly when it comes to sustainability, we will allow the users to kind of customize what they see to focus on the elements that require their attention. So what I've done here is I've put some examples of some of the dashboards that Asite offers when it comes to sustainability. So I'm going to try and elaborate on those a little bit more to show how these decisions and kind of like the visualization can impact those decision-making processes. So this here is our 3D repo dashboard, which, as you can see here, shows us a 3D model, right? Which is our focus here is to visualize the data on the 3D model elements directly, and to show us in color coding where the carbon emissions are at this bias and how we can make the decisions to reduce those elements. So again, filtering to find certain elements and to kind of focus on certain points within your model will allow you to then make the corrective measures accordingly. So changing the concrete elements here potentially could have a minimal impact on the slabs, but perhaps a higher impact on the columns and so far. And then again, for example, the steel elements and the rebar elements, you can see that they are actually, in terms of carbon emissions, they're not necessarily a huge factor here. And there's a lot of calculations that will aid us in this decision-making process, as you can see, which will then be based on the standards and regulations that are required within this region. Similarly, again, when it comes to delivery stage, we've got, again, a lot of metrics and areas that we monitor and make the decisions on accordingly. So starting from a portfolio view of all of your project's data, you can see, for example, overall the carbon emissions across all of your projects classified based on the project type. And also you can find different elements or metrics that will help you kind of understand more about this data. And for example, where the carbon emissions are coming from. And as you can see, the majority of it is coming from the material used rather than from what we immediately think of when it comes to carbon, which is regarding the energy consumption. Similarly, again, as I said earlier, you can actually filter to choose certain contractor or certain supplier in your project, perhaps also focus on a particular phase in your project and so on. So that will give you a lot of insights on where the actions are required, and the sustainability metrics can be kind of helpful when it comes to those decisions. Energy consumption has its own dashboard, as you can see, which allows, again, to kind of focus on where the data is coming and the energy consumption at its highest. Same thing for water, and then waste, and then material use. So you'll find loads and loads of metrics and statistics that will help aid the decision making as early as possible in each project. And eventually, we'll analyze all of that data, provide interactive, again, charts that will help us in that decision-making process, which will then eventually kind of impact and reduce the carbon and in fact, in general, the environmental elements. Just because we talked about the social elements quite a lot today, so I'd like to cover the workers' welfare dashboards here. As you can see, for example, looking at certain elements of the accommodation that's being provided, the transportation that's being offered, perhaps also any facilities that are available on site, which will then improve the overall well-being of workers on site, plus any other metrics that you as a sort of kind of stakeholders in this project are interested in, that can also be monitored and then presented in these dashboards. So bottom line is that whatever that data is that you think is relevant to your supply chain or to sustainability performance in general, that can be monitored, captured on Asite using standard forms that will help us kind of capture the data in a structured and kind of streamlined and standard process, which will then go through perhaps a process that goes through an approval stage, and then eventually being reflected at the dashboard to make the decision-making process a lot seamless and more efficient.
Thanks, Asyar. Now, I was interested that on one of your dashboards that the word compliance was there, and obviously to some extent it's obviously great that stakeholders are going to comply with the various standards, but obviously there's huge value to go beyond compliance. So it'd be really interesting to hear how you think what you're doing can go beyond that base level of compliance and really, you know, help organizations demonstrate a higher level of commitment to the E, the S, and the G.
Yes. Yeah, you're 100% correct. So compliance goes beyond, sorry, the sustainability module goes much more beyond the standard compliance. And what we focused on when it comes to our module is to allow the kind of the metrics that are not necessarily required from a standard to also be reflected. So when you have a cost reduction because you're using certain material, and also reducing, for example, energy consumption on project because of certain practices that you've implemented, that will also be reflected. So you will see the effect of the cost savings immediately on your dashboards, which will help you also make those decisions more frequently. And additionally, we've seen, in addition to the economic benefits, we've seen that the sustainable practices will also have an impact on the brand reputation of the stakeholders involved. Right, so the more sustainable you are, the better competitive edge you have against your competitors. Obviously, when it comes to tender submissions and participating in certain key governmental projects, for example. What we've also seen is that the social elements being monitored on site allows you to also have better kind of productive workflows, which will also again can be branded in terms of marketing that will help you also improve your competitive edge. And lastly, what I've seen is as well with our customers is that because they're monitoring this data on a regular basis, they're constantly improving their practices. And that's something that we've seen with many of our customers, where they don't just stick to what is minimum to be compliant with. They always strive to do a lot more because they've seen the benefits. So they do much more than just basic compliance, and they try to improve their sustainability practices constantly, which will then also help them on the long term.
Yeah, on that theme of customer experience, I mean, what sort of insights can you share with us around how some of your customers have actually begun to use this and the kind of positive effects it's had?
Yeah, so in terms of our customers, I can perhaps talk about our biggest customer in the Middle East. I would say one of the largest in the world, so the largest developers in the world. It's Aldar Properties. Aldar is a customer of Asite for 3.5 years now, so they've been using Asite across the board when it comes to information management. They have actually started using it on areas that are not necessarily out of the box. So we've actually developed certain modules specifically for their requirements. What we've seen is when it comes to Aldar specifically, the sustainability module has been a huge success. First of all, prior to Asite, this data was always captured on Excel sheets, and perhaps if captured at all, it will be lost in translation. So especially when it comes to transferring that knowledge that you gain in certain practices from one project to another. So what we've done with Aldar is to create a module that connects all of their kind of segregated departments, ensuring that the sustainability practices are unified across all projects, and starting from the way that we've ensured that the data capture is standardized and streamlined across projects. So from that, we found that the decision-making process has been a lot more efficient. Again, looking at the kind of the interactive dashboards and the dynamic way that this data is presented, which will help them make better informed decisions. And then Aldar is no exception for when it comes to actually exceeding the minimum compliance requirements. So they've actually always continuously tried to improve on their current practices, even when it's no longer kind of a compliance need. But overall, what we've seen, so the sustainability module for Aldar was implemented and was taken kind of into practice early 2022. And since then, we've seen that there is a reduction in energy consumption across their projects by 20%, which has been reported in their sustainability report this year. Actually, is quite exciting for us. What we've also seen is that their focus on the sustainability metric extended beyond the environmental elements. So they've had obviously the workers' welfare module also implemented with focus on the social elements when it comes to sustainability. But then they've also started looking at other areas of sustainability when it comes to the environmental impact and evaluating their construction projects' impact on the environment. They've also looked at the landscape projects as well, so no longer just focused on what happens in the built environment, but also taking that one step beyond that and looking at the landscape areas. And they've also recently announced the development of a new sustainable city in Yas Island, which, by the way, was a huge success. So within 24 hours of announcing this project, they managed to sell all of the units for phase one. So that shows you that there's a huge demand on a more sustainable way of living. And with Aldar as a success story in here, it's all about how you manage those decisions at an early stage to ensure that you deliver sustainable built environment.
Indeed, no, a great sort of use case there. I'm always sort of conscious that everything we try and do this sector does have to overcome a number of challenges that seem to be built into the sector. And I guess one of those is around the whole kind of fragmentation of data, particularly, and also just the complexity of some of the reporting, particularly around sustainability. So how have you kind of addressed those challenges, this kind of data fragmentation, this complexity of reporting with so many inputs, and some of those in different areas of the business and the disciplines?
Yes, so as I was saying with Alba, that was a key challenge, because obviously sustainability cannot be looked at as a separate, isolated thing. You have to always look at that as part of every decision that you make across your kind of like processes. So with that in mind, you cannot make a decision on the material that you use without evaluating the impact on other departments, for example, specifically on the cost of your project, understanding what how that is going to affect your program and the delivery timelines, etc. So this is why collaboration is a key factor here to allow those decisions to be made, and to also encourage those decisions to be made as early as possible. So again, with the sustainability metrics being so vast and kind of different, when it comes to energy consumption and waste management and water consumption and kind of hazardous material being used on site, workers' welfare, in addition to obviously the ongoing activities that you would have on site, that creates a big challenge, right? We need to make sure that all of these metrics are being captured correctly, but also in kind of coordination with other areas and other departments, and that is what the ASAP platform is for. It's to facilitate that collaboration and to ensure that different stakeholders can come together and visualize and see the data that they are capturing in a real-time manner, so that they can make the right decisions.
No,
I would say also, yeah, sorry, I was just going to say, so because of the importance of this and the importance of the collaboration that happens at this stage, the exchange of the data is also very important to ensure that you're not just capturing the data and sharing that data with the right stakeholders, whether that was immediately affecting them or whether it was an indirect effect. You have to make sure that the data is available to the right stakeholders at the right time. And that basically what the module has been focused on, and this ASAP platform in general is designed around.
No, excellent. And I guess a final question and thought, and it's always difficult to really predict the future, obviously, but from the kind of long-term or medium-term perspective, what do you see as the vision for the future of sustainability in the built environment, and what's Asite's role in supporting that?
So as we've talked about the urgency of sustainable practices in the built environment. So I definitely see that this is not going anywhere. So we have to continue to work on our sustainable practices to ensure that we at least can minimize the global warming effects. And we've seen the effects of that around the globe, especially in recent years. So we cannot start just ignore that and pretend that our practices are fine the way they are, because that basically what we've been doing everywhere else when it comes to construction. So you're probably aware that construction industry in general has not been quick enough in responding to kind of technology advances and to become early adopters of innovation and technological solutions. But we have seen a shift in that. So we have seen that now companies who've never actually had a kind of an information management platform before are keen to start with the sustainability. So this is where I feel that the whole kind of mindset is shifting towards having more of a digital transformation journey, starting with sustainability and perhaps expanding to other areas of construction elements. So yeah, so in a nutshell, this is not going to go anywhere. It's actually going to expand. It's going to grow into other elements. It's going to include other practices and departments within the construction industry, and also other stages of the entire life cycle of a built environment. But the way I see it, because of that shift towards more of a digital kind of environment, you'll see that there will be advances in this technology when it comes to the Internet of Things or the sensors that could capture this data automatically for us. So the way we're capturing the data might change, and will actually started changing already, because we've seen a big demand on reducing the time that we are spending on capturing the data, which means that we need to capture a lot of that data automatically using sensors on site, perhaps also using smart meters to automatically monitor and capture the sustainability metrics or energy consumption in general. So yeah, so we'll see a big shift towards automation, and which will then lead to a kind of enable the way towards smart cities and digital twinnings, which is a huge thing for the built environment in general, but will definitely have an impact on the way we manage our sustainability data as well.
No, fascinating. Well, we've covered a huge amount of ground on obviously a very, very key subject for the built environment. It's been fascinating to hear what you're doing and to hear those user stories of how it's actually working in action, and the importance of visual data to help people access and make informed decisions right across the life cycle. But for today, thanks ever so much for your time, Asyar, and I look forward to catching up again.
Thank you very much, Andrew. It was a pleasure speaking to you. And yes, we'll definitely see you soon. Thank you.